Coming up on Nuestra Voz Today, a young man tried to improve the lives of teenagers in Honduras, but was forced to flee.
Jovin had left Honduras because he was receiving threats after witnessing a murder.
A year after the U.S. deported him, he was killed by the people he fled. Find out why for many Central American migrants, a legitimate fear of death doesn't always matter in the U.S. asylum system.
Plus, we'll take you back 40 years to Fernando Valenzuela's incredible rookie season.
That's when we saw really how tough, how valiant Fernando was.
See how his gritty performance in Game 3 of the 1981 World Series cemented his pitching legacy in Los Angeles.
Also, we'll show you what goes into making a Sobaquera burrito and why the Sobaquera from El Ruso in LA's Boyle Heights is getting rave reviews.
And the COVID-19 pandemic affected bookings for many mariachis, but now their performances are in high demand. Hi everyone, hola, I'm Paola Hernández-Jiao.
And I'm Luis Cruz. Thank you for joining us for Nuestra Voz Today, presented by the San Diego Union-Tribune and the Los Angeles Times.
We begin with the dangerous journey of Central American migrants seeking asylum. Many get deported without ever getting a chance to apply for help.
San Diego Union-Tribune immigration reporter Kate Morrissey traveled to Central America to learn about the grave conditions which are causing many asylum seekers to leave their homes in search of a better life here in the U.S.
Jovin Estrada Villanueva was one of thousands of Hondurans who came to the United States in recent years to ask for asylum. He was denied protection and deported, and then he was killed by the people he fled. We went to Honduras to understand how something like that could happen in a system meant to protect the world's most vulnerable. Jovin had left Honduras because he was receiving threats after witnessing a murder. After he returned, those threats came back. He was shot while driving his mototaxi through an area contested by multiple gangs. Like Jovin, most Honduran asylum seekers lose their cases and are ordered deported. Cases related to gang violence are particularly difficult to win because of the way the U.S. government generally interprets asylum law. We don't know how many deported asylum seekers have been killed. But in Honduras, stories like Jovin's are really common, especially in neighborhoods like the one he grew up in. Jovin is from Choloma, a city just outside San Pedro Sula. Over the past few decades, his neighborhood has grown haphazardly and with little civic planning because many people moved to the region to work in nearby clothing factories. Even today, there is a severe lack of social services. People who live there have little access to electricity and potable water. Roads are unpaved and difficult to navigate. There aren't enough teachers for schools, and access to childcare is all but non-existent. In many ways, neighborhoods like Jovin's feel abandoned by the government. And in the government's absence, gangs have moved in to claim territory. For Jovin and his friends, refuge came in the form of hip-hop. Jovin was known as B-Boy Ross 1. He was a dancer and mentor to many in the country's growing hip-hop scene.
Jovin era un activista hip hop, era un joven que motivaba el cambio y todo esto, aunque parezca increíble, como yo le digo a muchas personas, era a través del baile, que cualquiera puede decir de que el baile solo es una forma de entretenerse, pero él y nosotros nunca lo vimos como una simple forma de entretenerse, sino que es algo que nos ayuda a trascender la conciencia, a volvernos fuertes porque nos une, el baile nos une, el hip hop nos une.
It's not surprising to see hip hop resonating in Honduras when you consider its origins. Hip hop was born in the South Bronx in the 1970s. People who lived there, who were mostly Black and Latino, were also facing government abandonment and gang takeovers. They also faced aggressive over-policing. You were assumed to be a criminal just for living there, criminalized for being poor and a person of color. The same can be said today for people who live in many neighborhoods around San Pedro Sula. A youth movement grew out of these conditions in the Bronx. These young people who had been left to fend for themselves dared to say, "My existence matters, I matter, we matter." And that was the beginning of hip hop.
Y es justamente en ese contexto donde también viene a nacer aquí el hip hop. Viene esa semilla del hip hop aquí a Chamelecón y da esa oportunidad que no había.
Mira cómo lo hago porque sabes paranoia. Cada vez que vengo haciendo un estilo que suena en olla. Quieres competir conmigo y te doy paranoia. Ya acabó tu tiempo, pasaste a hacer historia.
Jovin was at the center of that youth movement in Honduras, and his death rippled through the entire country's hip hop community.
Cuando me mandaron a mí la noticia pues, de que había sido asesinado, de que habían acribillado a un mototaxista, así decía la prensa, ¿verdad? Pero yo digo, él no era solo un mototaxista, sino que era un joven que motivaba el cambio. Y él era de los que creían que lo que hacemos los hombres también lo pueden hacer las mujeres.
Jovin was known for teaching B-girls in particular. That's not common in breaking globally. B-girls often face discrimination, so the fact that Jovin really took the time to encourage and train women is significant. One of his students, Jency Fresh, is now one of the best B-girls in Central America. She remembers the way that her mentor used to encourage young people to join their practices to keep them away from the gangs.
Cuando veas a una persona bailando, es un delincuente menos. Porque aunque no lo creas, el baile te aparta, te ocupa tu mente y aparte de eso es saludable para tu vida. O sea, haces un ejercicio que te va a ayudar mucho en tu vida. Entonces, yo siempre decía eso. El día 8 de agosto, cuando pasó, estaba específicamente en este lugar. Porque iba a entrenar, como ya mencionado, él iba a venir a entrenar con nosotros. Cuando recibí la llamada, yo dije, ¿aló? Y me dice, ¿te diste cuenta? Asesinaron a Jovin. En ese momento se me aflojó todo mi cuerpo, caí al suelo, no podía respirar, me había quedado así paralizada. Yo dije, no, pero qué imposible. Pero fue muy duro para nosotros.
Jovin's family also took us to see his grave. They were afraid to be fully identified because of what happened to him. The family is still so full of grief. They moved away after Jovin's death, but they've filled the walls of their new home with memories of him.
Aquí en Honduras, el gobierno de Honduras no le garantizó sus derechos al trabajo, su derecho a la cultura, a la libre expresión. Fue a Estados Unidos a pedir apoyo y tampoco lo ayudaron allá, sino que lo regresaron acá. Y estando acá, el Estado de Honduras nuevamente fue incapaz de garantizar el derecho a la vida.
To read Kate Morrissey's comprehensive series on the U.S. asylum system, log on to SanDiegoUnion-Tribune.com/returned. There you'll find an interactive experience that enables you to walk through the asylum process for yourself. You'll see how the decisions you make can impact your case.
Coming up, 4 decades after his 1981 debut with the Dodgers, Fernando Mania lives on. We'll revisit the World Series game many say solidified Fernando Valenzuela's pitching legacy in Los Angeles. Nuestra Voz Today will be right back. Welcome back to Nuestra Voz Today. This was a heartbreaking season for Dodger fans. The Dodgers were just 2 wins away from going to the World Series.
Yeah, it's tough when you're so close. But LA Times columnist Gustavo Arellano takes us back in time to some happier moments. He tells us about the World Series game that turned the tide for the 1981 Dodgers in this installment of Fernando Mania at 40.
Fernando Mania was put on pause when Major League players went on strike on June 12, 1981. At the time, the Dodgers were leading the National League West. When play resumed nearly 2 months later, the Dodgers were declared the winners of the season's first half, which was a good thing because the team was sluggish the rest of the way, going just 27-26. The same can be said of Fernando Valenzuela's performance on the mound. After his magical 8-0 start, he finished the regular season 13-7 with a 2.48 earned run average.
The strike killed the momentum a lot. You know, he was doing unbelievable, and then they shut down.
We didn't play for 50 days. That's going to break the rhythm for anybody. So at least in that respect, all of us were in the same boat.
And when they started playing again, he wasn't ordinary, but he was closer to ordinary than what he had been before. He didn't go back to that incredible level that he had before, but he was still really good.
The Dodgers regained their mojo in time for the postseason, which, due to the strike, featured an extra round of playoffs. After eliminating the Astros in the first round, they played a thrilling 5-game championship series against the Montreal Expos. Valenzuela got the win in the clincher, giving up just 3 hits and 8 2/3 innings in a dramatic 2-1 victory. But the pitcher's performance was almost an afterthought.
The Dodgers wound up playing in Montreal, and Rick Monday hit a home run to win the game and became known as Dodger Blue Monday. And I remember, and Fernando pitched that game, and he pitched a real good game. Rick Monday was the story of that game, not Fernando.
Fernando was a story, there's no question about that. But winning the pennant, winning the playoffs, an extra set of playoffs, that was its own story within itself. It was unique in that there was never an extra layer of playoffs to get to the League Championship Series and ultimately the World Series.
The Dodgers were a veteran team in 1981. Many players had been on the losing end of 3 World Series in the 1970s. So there was a sense of urgency in the matchup against the Yankees, who defeated them in 1977 and 1978.
There were guys who came up through the organization that were now reaching 30, or they were already in their 30s, so they were on the backside of their careers. There were players who had come over previously in trades that played in the 77 and 78 World Series that had never won one. And then there was my group that had played in neither of those World Series, but had joined the ball club and were instrumental in the success of the team as it stood in the early 80s. And then the final group was the kids who were coming up through the organization and experiencing it for the first time. So it was a mix and match to put all of these players together, knowing that all of us were a year older, and perhaps this would be the last chance for us to win as a group.
After dropping the first 2 games in New York, the Dodgers were feeling an unpleasant sense of World Series deja vu. At the time, no baseball team had ever rebounded from a 3-0 playoff deficit. Valenzuela was asked to stop the bleeding. He got to start in Game 3 back in Los Angeles.
They had already lost the first 2 games, so that was a key game.
My turn was about the 3rd game, so I say, well, that's the time. That's the real time, because the World Series is very important game for not only for myself, for the team, but for the city, for the fans.
You know, the people talk about Fernando, how good he was, and he never let that to his head. He got a good control of himself. He knew how big those games were, so he was prepared for the World Series. He pitched like every other game. He wasn't trying to do anything different. Throw strike and try to get it out.
But Valenzuela was shaky and wild, giving up 4 runs in the first 3 innings. The Yankees had him on the ropes early on, and manager Tommy Lasorda almost pulled the rookie when he got into a jam in the 4th inning.
That's when we saw really how tough, how valiant Fernando was.
try to think in what I can do it now so I can get out of this jam. I got a little problem with the control and all that.
He didn't have his good stuff that day. The Yankees really treated him badly, but he kept pitching, he kept pitching. La Sorda came to the mound several times, thinking of taking him out, but I don't know how Fernando was able to convince La Sorda to let him in.
La Sorda went to talk to him and says, hey, listen, if these guys don't get on, we'll win this game in Spanish. And Fernando looked at him and goes, really? So, I mean, he was thinking of joking even in a moment like that. They were up by 1 run and the guy didn't sweat it.
He was like a fighter really going to go down to the canvas. And I don't know how he did. He kept up and he's still pitching and pitching and pitching. That was the toughest game I can remember any pitcher had, especially on a World Series. But he was able to finish the game.
Valenzuela gutted it out, throwing a complete game in the Dodgers' 5-4 victory. But he didn't win so much as survive. He threw 146 pitches, giving up 9 hits and walking 7, 2 intentionally. But the momentum had shifted, and the Dodgers defeated the Yankees in 6 games, 4-2.
Oh, Fernando was not worried about pitch counts, innings pitched. He was worried about the next pitch. And he's so smart. He knew how to set up hitters. And for him, even the World Series was just another game, which is why his career was so good, because he treated every moment and didn't make it as bigger than it was. To him, he was playing catch with a catcher. You know, 50,000 fans at Yankee Stadium, so what? 55,000 at Dodger Stadium, so what?
He just kept battling. He was fortunate in that he had Mike Socha as a catcher. And Mike was smart enough to recognize that if 1 or 2 of his pitches weren't working, he could still get Fernando through the inning with whatever pitches he had left until those pitches came back. It was fun watching the 2 of them work together.
It was a very special year, 1981, very special. I honestly think that we will never see another season like 1981. No way, no way. And because of Fernando Valenzuela.
To learn more about Fernando Valenzuela's legacy and to watch more installments of Fernando Mania at 40, log on to latimes.com/Fernando Mania. If you like burritos, you're going to love this next story. Food columnist Lucas Juan Peterson takes us to the Sobaquera from El Ruso and Boyle Heights, where they serve a tasty traditional Sonoran-style treat wrapped up in an oversized flour tortilla.
It looks so delicious. It's making me crave a burrito right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at what it takes to prepare a Sobaquera burrito.
I am particularly into these sobaqueras from El Ruso in the southeast corner of Boyle Heights.
Aquí comencé hace, creo que voy para 5 años. Me lastimé la espalda y a mi trabajo ya no lo podía hacer. Y dije, ¿qué hago? ¿Qué hago? Dije, pues voy a vender tacos. Pues la sobaquera prácticamente es un burrito, pero de estilo Sonora. De hecho, yo cuando en Sonora que dije, no, sobaquera, pues le tenía un poquito por el nombre, pero yo creo que por eso, porque se las llegan hasta aquí cuando las extienden. Esa tortilla prácticamente no lleva manteca, es pura agua. Y es bien dificultoso para hacerla con las puras manos, pero su sabor es diferente. Cuando prueba la del taco y prueba la de sobaquera, su sabor es completamente diferente. Le ponemos el queso y se pone la tortilla arriba que se dore. Se levanta, le ponemos la carne que quiera. Chile colorado es carne deshebrada, chile California seco. Lo molemos, lo colamos, cocemos la carne y es todo. Después ya nomás echamos el chile sobre la carne deshebrada hasta que se cocina y ya. Nosotros ponemos a un lado, ponemos las verduras, el guacamole y la salsa. El aguacate, si tú vas a cualquier taquería en Sonora, allá le dicen aguamole. Y así es el estilo.
The sobaquera, as explained by the owner Walter Soto, is essentially a Sonoran burrito. So the sobaqueras are huge flour tortillas that are rolled super thin and are filled with different meats of your choice. And in this case, I got the chile colorado, the word I can't say, chile colorado, colorado. All the meats are cooked overnight, so they're really flavorful, deeply marinated, and it's essentially anything you could possibly want in a food. It's compact and handheld, and it looks delicious. That was really good.
To read more about the Sobaquera from El Ruso and for more videos from the What We Are Into food video series, visit the LA Times food section at latimes.com/food.
Mariachi is traditional Mexican music, and it's customary to have mariachis performing at special celebrations.
The COVID-19 pandemic caused the cancellation of many quinceañeras, weddings, and large festivities. And that meant mariachi bands were also receiving cancellations. But now that parties are being rebooked, mariachis are getting busy again.
We're playing here for a quinceañera that got postponed. Now it's a Sweet 16 because of COVID. And we're just entertaining the family and bringing them happy memories.
Well, my mom got a mariachi because it was a surprise for my daughter, who is in remission for cancer, for the Hodgkin's lymphoma. Last year, we were supposed to have our quinceañera, and we paid for everything, and they had hired a mariachi already, so they just decided to use it right now.
The pandemic affected us because in the beginning we were very scared we were going to lose our jobs completely. The fear was only 1 month long, and as soon as May 5th hit and Dia de las Madres, Mother's Day, we got very booked. And right now we're working maybe double the amount that we were working last year, this time of year during winter.
To watch the full video by lead photojournalist Alejandro Tamayo and read reporter Andrea Lopez Villafaña's story, go to SanDiegoUnionTribune.com.
Before we go, we want to invite you to sign up for the LA Times Latinx Files newsletter, written by our friend, audience engagement editor Fidel Martinez. The weekly newsletter is dedicated entirely to the American Latinx experience. Sign up at lattimes.com/newsletters.
Also, stay up to date on the latest news with the newsletters offered by the San Diego Union-Tribune at SanDiegoUnionTribune.com/newsletters.
That does it for this edition of Nuestra Voz Today.
Gracias por su sintonía. Los esperamos para el próximo programa. Thank you for watching.